So kind of before I guess I, share my screen, jump in and kind of give, the typical overview training. I guess I always just like to kind of get a sense, just sort of like generally, it doesn't have to be specifics, but like, what you guys are kind of interested in using PolicyMap for. That's always just sort of, can be helpful in terms of framing some things, but I already kind of have a sense of like the work that you guys do. So I try and tailor these a little bit.
Yeah. I can just be brief about our applications, and then maybe Morgan, if you wanted to speak a little bit more about BA. And Charles, also feel free to pitch in. So as a CDFI, obviously, I think you might be familiar with the industry. We have to target specific geographies with our lending capital. So maintaining those, essentially those numbers can be challenging without being able to predict before engaging with those businesses whether or not they apply to the criteria we're looking for. So we're looking for LMI communities, and that can be determined by a variety of tests. So unemployment metrics, poverty metrics, and then also census tract designation. So having that information on the front end, especially when we're increasing in volume with our leads, we can PolicyMap for us would be really helpful in uploading the address data and just generating that data on the front end rather than testing every individual lead as it comes in. So we have a tool that we use, but it's a little bit clunkier. I think PolicyMap will really help us launch us into the next phase of our organization in terms of our impact and our impact measurement and reporting. So that's largely what our application is on lending.
Great, that's helpful.
And Morgan, I don't know if you want to speak to maybe BA's potential applications. I know this is your first time kind of joining us for these calls.
Yeah, I haven't done my homework, so we'll use today's demo to help spur some ideas, but just general sense of what we do. We're a national program, so unlike lending, we are in all 50 states. We're supporting small businesses in all 50 states. We have a real intentional push to serve Black and Brown owned businesses specifically, and businesses of color. We're also looking to reach rural businesses, so I think that there's some application there because that's a little bit more difficult to kind of measure. So yeah, and I'll chime in throughout if there's anything that I can think of as you are presenting that would be relevant. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's helpful for sure.
And just as the grants person, I can kind of chime in that, like, I have to see across both of all of our practices really. And so like having different programs to kind of think about, who we serve in kind of different ways, measure it, it's very clunky. And of course, just in terms of like reporting on what we do, like looking for opportunities to kind of tell the story of who we're serving. I think that, PolicyMap has a lot of potential to maybe like dig a little bit deeper, and maybe we get a little bit more of a, more data, more information about who it is that we're reaching, and that can be really compelling too. So yeah, very high hopes for potential here.
Okay, great. Yeah, that sounds great, and that's all very, very helpful, and it'll help me kind of, I think, just in terms of like I said, framing some of the overview too, and it's just always helpful background for us to know kind of how different subscribers are using the tool. So that's awesome. Thank you. So I'll jump in. I'm going to share my screen. And I will pull up PolicyMap. Okay. All right, so everybody should just be seeing the PolicyMap landing page right now. Okay, so so I can give just kind of the quick background on PolicyMap. I think it sounds like there's some familiarity with kind of who we are, and so I'll just kind of give a quick background, and then we can kind of jump into the overview. So, so PolicyMap is an online mapping and data platform. We do have kind of data across the nation, even though we're a pretty small team. based in Philadelphia, with a couple of software engineers, developers, tech team out on the West Coast in Los Angeles. And so the tool has this nationwide data coverage. It kind of consists of almost 40,000 indicators from a variety of kind of public data sources. So things like, data from the census, health data from CDC and Health and Human Services, and data from Bureau of Labor Statistics, and kind of all these different federal agencies that are releasing data on this ongoing basis and maintaining it. And then we're kind of also incorporating some proprietary sources that we license on things like residential and business vacancy rates, school performance data, some grocery store locations, and things along those lines. And we basically kind of mesh these data sources together in what we hope to and believe is a easy to use mapping and reporting tool. So the data is going to cover topics from demographics, income, housing, jobs, health, education, and other areas. Use cases of PolicyMap that that we know of are things like research, market studies, business planning, site selection, grant applications, impact analysis, other just sort of general data visualization purposes. The subscribers that we work with include federal, state, and local government. Universities, a lot of universities use PolicyMap both for kind of like course curriculum as well as for research. Nonprofit organizations, lots of CDFIs, and then lots of kind of recent interests from kind of healthcare and the public health sector. So we started in 2008 as part of the Reinvestment Fund, which is a CDFI based in Philadelphia, and it was basically an internal tool to kind of like Charles was saying, kind of like to help them tell their story and kind of better understand like the neighborhoods and the communities where they were making their investments, targeting their resources, and then to be able to start talking about the impact. And then we kind of spun off from there as they, as it's basically, they realized other organizations could benefit from a tool like this. So to speak quickly to the subscription for Pacific Community Ventures, so you guys have a premium subscription, so it allows for up to 10 user seats with access to the tools. I know there's a few seats that are still available. Full functionality available in the tool, all the data through the through the tool, and then it also includes what we refer to as kind of a limited amount of custom data loading. So that may be something like loading some data that's really specific to your work that is maybe not like a nationwide data set that we already have available in our data library, but might be helpful for the work that you're doing. So something like loans or project locations, it's kind of a common use case or example with some of our other CDFI customers. They may want to kind of like have us load in like their loan portfolio so that you can kind of like see where those are located and then really be able to like quickly kind of figure out which ones are located in low and moderate income communities and stuff like that. So it could be that kind of thing, address level data to, for us to display as points. Can also be other things, polygons or some sort of set of indicators or variables. And then the other piece is within the premium subscription, it does include a what we call a PolicyMap widget, which is basically kind of like a interactive mapping tool that you can embed like on your website, and can include some indicators from our data library, as well as like if we load some custom data for you guys. I think somebody may have just joined. Let me just check and see. Okay, yeah, I think so.
Hi, everyone.
Just joined.
So just a quick introduction, Brian. Sanjana is our manager on research and consulting. They do all of our impact work and impact assessment, and also consulting for other firms and organizations. So also lots of potential for their team.
Great, yeah, and nice to meet you. I was just giving a kind of quick overview on PolicyMap and the subscription for Pacific Community Ventures. So we haven't really jumped into anything with the overview kind of training yet. So the last thing I'll mention before jumping in is that you may or may not know, but we're kind of in the midst of transitioning from an older legacy version of PolicyMap to a new version of PolicyMap. I'm pretty much just going to be showing things primarily in the new version of the tool because we've kind of officially flipped the switch. There's a couple of features that are just sort of still just available in the legacy version that are kind of gradually getting rolled over into the new tool. So I can point those out, but like I said, for the most part, we'll be kind of working in the new platform, but just worth mentioning it. And also, so I'll start with a overview of basic functionality, talk about some of the data that's available, kind of where to find it, and then I can demonstrate some of the more advanced features of the tool, like multi-layer mapping and creating custom regions. And it sounds like the data loader, the ability to upload your own address level data, might be of interest. So I'll try and also do that one if we have enough time to do everything. So PolicyMap is a web-based tool, so you can access from any computer's internet access. The URL is just policymap.com, and that will bring you here where you can log in. And so you can log in with the credentials that you were set up with. Usually the first time that you're set up, you'll get like a temporary password that you can use to log in for the first time. There's also the forgot password link to just get like a an email. This little pop-up is just kind of letting people know about the new version of the tool. And so when you log in, this is the the default screen that you'll see. It'll be kind of this full view of the United States. Kind of this is our map window down here where you can pull the map around and use this the wheel on your mouse to scroll in and out, just kind of like as if you were working in any other sort of web-based mapping application. And then all of our data is kind of have kind of maintained or organized up here, and I'll kind of jump into all that in just a second. So the support resources I'd mentioned kind of at the top, but up in the top right corner here is a link to our support page. So we do have a lot of like guides, tutorials, like some brief kind of like quick little training videos on this support page. And then there is like a a contact button up here, which just kind of goes to that general info at PolicyMap, kind of like general support email that's monitored by a couple of my colleagues. And then we also recently just added this what's new section, which kind of just captures like data updates, like as different sources are updated, and just kind of lists them out. And we'll also be adding like kind of as we're rolling out new features and stuff like that, we'll host that here too. And so this whole support page is also searchable. So if you wanted to like look at custom regions or something like that, you can search and then kind of see like the different posts that you can check out. Really quick is I had mentioned we have the legacy version of the tool and the new version. This is the new version that we're going to be working in. But if you needed to toggle to the legacy tool for any reason, there's a link up here at the top, which will take you to the legacy version of the tool. And then when you're in the legacy version, you'll see a similar link that just kind of brings you back and forth. So you do have the ability to toggle right now, just kind of while we are still folding, like I said, like the last couple of features and functions over from the legacy tool. So in terms of the core functionality in PolicyMap, one of the kind of the main items is going to be this set location bar up here above the map window. And so in here you can search for a specific address or a city or a county or zip code, and this will basically kind of navigate you to that place on the map. And so as you start typing in areas, or so if I wanted to look for like Sacramento, I can see the results, click on one of these, and it'll zoom to that area on the map and just kind of show you the boundary for the city of Sacramento. So I'll come back to these buttons in just a second once I actually have some data displayed on the map. In terms of the base map, as you zoom in, you'll see that kind of like additional base map details start to populate here. And you can zoom in, kind of especially with this new platform, you can zoom in really, really closely down to like almost the street level to be able to, start seeing building footprints and, the individual streets and, different landmarks and things like that. There's lots of kind of different elements of the base map that you can change and kind of customize using this base map settings little gear icon in the very bottom right hand corner. So we have sort of like these 4 default base maps if you want to use the standard one. There's also kind of like a grayscale base map. We have a terrain base map, and then there's also a satellite one. And within each of these, you have the ability to also turn on and off different kind of layers within the base map. So, if you wanted to, have, your roads, but didn't want the road labels, you could turn off road labels by like unchecking that box, turn off building footprints. So there's lots of kind of customization that you can do just with kind of the visual that you're creating with these base map settings. There's also, you'll see here, there starts to be a little bit of a, 3D element to it. You can, if you're kind of looking to create some, again, interesting visuals, you do have the ability to kind of change your angle, especially, which can kind of create like some, cool maps, like when you're in, more urban centers and you kind of have like different building heights and stuff like that to visualize along with some data on the map. So that 3D button's just down here in the bottom right-hand corner, and you can reset to kind of the overhead view by clicking on that reset button. So the data in PolicyMap is going to be, as I mentioned, kind of all organized into these data menus across the top of the map window, from demographics all the way over to analytics. That is all of the data that is, part of the PolicyMap data library that we're, maintaining and updating on an ongoing basis. And so as you, open these up, you'll start to see some of the, I apologize, a little bit of background noise over here, but you'll start to see, the different indicator families that you can, kind of glance through and then select something to actually, have displayed on the map. So as I go through the demographics menu, race and ethnicity, I can see, the different, race indicators, and these get kind of even more specific. So they kind of branch out into these cascading menus until you find, the layer that you want, and then, or the data point that you want, and then once you select it, it will, display that on the map. So if we were to do Black, African American, non-Hispanic, once you select something, that will display here on the map. And in this case, this will be, a data layer. And I'll talk a little bit about data layers and data points, but kind of the, the data layer is going to be shading areas based off of that variable, percent non-Hispanic Black population. So the data itself, so, just to kind of quickly run through these and kind of point out, some of the, indicators and data sets and stuff like that, that may be of particular interest to you guys. Demographics is obviously going to have lots of the data from the census, so race, ethnicity, age, population with disabilities, foreign-born populations. Incomes and spending will have, things like median household income, family income, household income brackets. Poverty rates are going to be in here. Families in poverty, persistent poverty. So that's kind of where a lot of that data is going to be. The housing menu has data on, like home ownership affordability, renter affordability, and cost burdens, vacancy rates, as well as just sort of like general information on like number of homeowners and renters. The lending menu is going to have some point data like bank branch law office locations, credit unions, CDFI locations. There's also mortgage lending data in here, and there's going to be like some small business lending data here that comes from a CRA source that has nationwide coverage. The quality of life menu has, things like libraries and farmers markets, and things like, brownfields and Superfund sites and libraries, museums. There's also, indicators on computer and internet access, some food access data, which may be of interest. The economy menu has data on unemployment and like workforce characteristics, business vacancy, and education is going to have, school locations, some school district level statistics, universities, community colleges, school performance type of data. The health menu has hospitals and nursing facilities, other kind of health facility locations, as well as like a lot of data from CDC and HHS and stuff like that on like health conditions and risk factors and outcomes and all that kind of stuff. And then the federal guidelines menu is going to have, I think, like some of these, place-based type of like eligibility areas that that Hyder had mentioned at the beginning. So, we'll have the CRA eligibility is going to be in here. Additional federal guidelines. There's CRA eligibility, so you can just kind of like load that layer on to see CRA eligible tracks and like the different eligibility categories. And then there's also under additional CDFI fund programs, there's the CDFI investment areas on, what are the qualifying tracks, and then also like specific layers that you can display to show, the different criteria that are used in terms of like being able to designate areas as a qualifying investment area tract. So I have like some examples we can go through kind of looking at some of that. But wanted to just kind of give that quick overview as far as kind of like what, is in each of these data menus. There is also a data search bar. So, like I said, we group everything by theme to make it easy to kind of find what you're looking for. But if you want to do like keyword searching, you can use the data search bar to try and find something like that. So if you were to like type in like CRA eligibility, you should see, track status for CRA eligibility, and then you could select this from here and it would load this same indicator on the map. So there's these, I would say kind of generally we have data layers, which are going to be something like the CRA eligibility one, or the non-Hispanic Black population indicator that we were just looking at, and then we have data points, which are going to be like the actual point locations of a bank branch or a school. And so I'll talk next just a little bit about interacting with those two different types of data. So for just sort of demonstration purposes, I'll use a poverty indicator. And we'll look at, families in poverty. We'll look at like a specific one here, basically, single female, single mother households living in poverty. So I've loaded that indicator on the map, and anytime you have a data layer, you'll see over in the legend like a little, title for, what data layer is being displayed. You can click on the little eye bubble to see a little bit more description, and some of our, you'll see some layers have kind of more detailed descriptions, especially like things like CRA eligibility and stuff like that. And then from here, you can click to this data directory link, which is also available from over here in the legend, this little source where it shows you the source of the data is coming from the census. This link will also kind of, both of those will take you to the same place, and we'll show you, the actual little bit more detail on the source. So we have lots of documentation in here about our data sources, what years are available, what geographies you can get that data at, and the last time it was updated in PolicyMap. And then there's also some additional detail about, anything relative to, relevant in terms of like how we process the data. So all of our sources are listed here, but they all just kind of get redirected from those link locations on the map. So when you have a data layer, as you're kind of moving your mouse around, you'll get to see you know, that there's this hover, so I'm not clicking on anything, just kind of moving my mouse. There's a little, you know, info bubble that tells you, you know, basically, you know, for the census tract in this case that I'm hovering over, what's the, you know, estimated percent of families, you know, that are single female with children that are living in poverty. In this case, it's over 61% in that particular census tract. And so that hover is something, you know, that you'll see anytime you have this data layer, a data layer displayed on the map. You can turn that off if it becomes distracting by clicking on the toggle down here to turn on and off the hover. So that'll just kind of, you know, remove that. There's also kind of like a little bit of, you know, interaction between your hover, where your kind of mouse is located, and the legend. So you may see, like, as you're hovering over an area that's dark purple, that dark purple range over here in the legend is going to kind of be highlighted in a light gray color. And it's just basically kind of showing you that, you know, based off of where your mouse is located, sort of where it falls within these ranges over here in the legend. And you can click on these ranges. So if you wanted to, like, just see the tracks that are in these top two buckets, you can click on them, and then kind of hides everything else. And you're just basically seeing, like, the census tracts that are, you know, above, in this case, you know, 37.5% for this specific indicator. And if you click on the X's, you can remove those selections and just kind of bring everything back on. So when you click on an area, so, you know, again, there's the hover, but if you click on, like, an individual area on the map, this more detailed info bubble will come up, and this will show you, you know, for the area that you selected, it'll show you what that value is for that indicator. So for that census tract, again, it's just over 61%. And then it will also show you the values for some benchmark areas in which that census tract is located. So in this case, you know, the zip code area, the county, state, and the nation, so that you can do these quick comparisons of, you know, how, like, a small area compares to a larger, you know, benchmark area in which it's situated. And then, you know, if there is historical data for the particular indicator that you've selected, these, you know, change over time. You know, kind of preview trend charts will be available, and you can hover over these to kind of just get, like, quick previews of, like, the change in a value over, you know, multiple time frames for these different areas. And then this is something that you can kind of expand out into a full chart by clicking on this see full chart, which opens up kind of this sort of, like, you know, larger trend chart modal, where you can, you know, add additional benchmarks. So if you wanted to add, like, Sacramento and, you know, the state of California, you could kind of add those additional trend lines. And then this is something that, you know, is interactive as you hover over it to be able to see, you know, how things have changed for your census tract versus, again, those benchmark areas. And then this is something you can, you know, export either the image of this trend chart you can kind of pull out really quickly, or you can download the actual, like, summary data that's populating this trend chart using the download CSV. The other kind of thing to go over as far as working with or interacting with the data layers is the legend and the different options in the legend over here. So you can, you know, change your year. If you want to look at a previous time frame for that same indicator, you can select from this drop down and go back to, like, the previous census ACS 5-year estimate. It'll kind of, you know, just sort of change to show that same indicator for that different time frame. You could also go back to, like, the year 2000 for this, you know, in a lot of cases for indicators coming from the census. So there's the year drop down. There's also the variable drop down, where you know, you can change what particular variable you're looking at. So in, you know, the default in most cases is going to be like a percent, estimated percent number, since there's sort of some normalization to that. But in a lot of cases, you can toggle the variable to see, like, an estimated number rather than the percent. Or in some cases, we may have, like, percent change indicators to show, you know, a visualization of, how, a particular variable has, changed over time from like the previous 5 years or going back to 2000. So there's the different variables that you can select. And then there's different color ramps. If you want to select, this kind of gets more at, customizing your visualization. You can change your color ramps. You can also edit the actual ranges for the indicator that you're looking at. So if you wanted to, change this to, the top range to just like above 60%, you can just sort of change these numbers or use these as sliders to change, and you'll see like everything is just sort of dynamically changing on the map based off of how you sort of slide these the range sliders in here. And then when you have a layer on the map, you'll see in the legend that it'll tell you, how the data is being shaded. So you'll see it says it's shaded by census tract right now. And so when you select this, you can see like other geographies at which that particular indicator is available. And you can, select one of these just to sort of, if you wanted to change this to shade by zip code area, you can do that. Additionally, if you kind of are liking the census tract and you kind of want to lock that in rather than kind of have this change based off of your zoom level, which is kind of the default, that when you kind of zoom out, it goes to larger boundaries. You can also just use this little lock icon to kind of lock your data layer to that particular boundary type, so that even when you are, zooming in and out, it doesn't really care, and it just keeps the data layer displayed at that particular boundary. So let me go ahead and just load a data point on the map. So we'll load on one of our housing locations data sets and do HUD multifamily. So this will be kind of, basically kind of HUD subsidized properties in Sacramento. And so you'll see that these are going to be displayed as these, little orange diamonds on the map. And so when you hover over a point data set, you can see sort of like a name, field for the particular point data that you have displayed. And if you click on one of these, then you can see some more attributes, and these attributes will just kind of, vary depending on the particular point data that you're looking at. In this case, we have, the property name, address information, some information on the different contracts on the property, and then like some physical inspection type of information. You can turn on and off labels on point data sets up in the point legend by using some of these different buttons. This will, turn on some labels if that's kind of helpful, again, for how you're creating your visual. You can also hide like an individual point data set temporarily from your map by clicking on the little eyeball icon. And you can change, the icon size and shape using those different options, as well as the color. And there's also the ability to have filters in most cases. On most of our point data, you'll see filters, so you can see, if you wanted to filter like your multifamily properties based off of like the physical inspection score and see those that have, scored on the lower end, you can select one of those filter options to see only those points. In this case, there's, basically just one down here in South Sacramento. Or in a lot of cases, you can keep all the points on the map and just color code them based off of a filter group, and then it will, kind of, show you over here the corresponding kind of breakdown for that particular filter group selection color coded. So if you ever want to remove, a point or a layer from the map, you can click on the little X's up in the legends. And then there's also a reset map button in the bottom right-hand corner, which will basically just kind of clear everything off your map and bring you back out to the default kind of view for the United States. So in addition to, the data layers, the data points. We have, boundary overlays in PolicyMap. So from this boundaries menu, which is just to the left of demographics, these are, if you wanted to kind of, overlay your zip code boundaries on top of like a data layer that you're looking at. You can, add that map boundary overlay, and then from the boundary legend, you can, again, turn on and off labels. You can change like the color and line, design and line weight and style and stuff like that. So those are some of the different options available. And the map boundaries, you'll see that we do have, also just in it may or may not be kind of utility to you guys is, we have a lot of like congressional district boundaries, state level kind of, House and Senate district boundaries. So, those are things that you can also use both from kind of like showing that as a boundary overlay, as well as within the set location bar, being able to like see the boundary of a particular congressional district and download some data for that congressional district. So I'm going to pull back up the set location bubble really quickly. So I'm just going to I still have Sacramento kind of saved up here in this set location bar. I'm just going to pull this back up. So now I have data on the map, so I can kind of do, show you a sort of some of these things you can do with these different buttons that were on here before. So, so you can, when you have a location selected, and you see this, orange outline for that location that you selected, you can use this clip button to clip your data layer to, basically just have areas shaded if they fall within your selected location. Kind of operates as kind of like a mask around, your selected location. You can also use these next two buttons to kind of dig into the data a little bit more based off of this, location that you've set. So if you click on the table button, it opens up this sidebar over here on the right-hand side, which will show you, for the indicator that you have on the map, this percent of families with single mothers that are with children in poverty. It will show you, all of the tracts that fall within your selected location. So in this case, it's I think I'm using the county of Sacramento, so there's over 300 census tracts in here, and it will show you, like the individual values for the census tracts that fall within your selected location. And as you, hover over, this list of tracts over here on the sidebar, it will show you over on the map like where those are located, just kind of with that little outline hover. And then you can download this list of tracts using this little download button over here. And this will just kind of generate a CSV through your browser. So if you're trying to get, within a particular jurisdiction, an export of, something like poverty rates, or, the list of tracts that are low and moderate income within a given city or something like that, this is kind of how you would do that. And this is just popped up through my browser. So then similarly, you can use your selected location to view, a list of like points that fall within your selected location. And you can get to that either by clicking on this lists button from this info bubble, or by over here on this kind of sidebar that opens up. You can select this drop down to, jump over to look at the point data by changing this to see a list of points within your area. And so this is going to show me all the HUD multifamily properties within the county of Sacramento as a list. And again, you can kind of scroll through this. You can open this up as kind of a more full table, clicking on that full table button at the bottom. And then you can see like all of the different attributes for that point data based off of your selected location. This is also something you can export.
Can you reiterate where you open the sidebar from?
Yeah. So let me close it. So basically, to get to that sidebar, you want to have an area, like you want to actually like set an area either through this set location bar up here. So, put on like Sacramento, or I'll do, different city, Bakersfield, select that location. That will show you this, call it kind of like the set location bubble, because it just kind of tells you like you're selecting Bakersfield. And it's these buttons down here, this table button or this list button. These two open up that sidebar. So the table will show you basically the values for the data layer, and then the list button will show you the list of points that fall within that selected location. And you'll see these buttons show up other places too. So like if you're just like perusing a data layer that you have on the map, and then you select, like this census tract, you'll see those buttons here too. So it's basically kind of anytime you have like an area selected with this orange boundary, that you'll see like the ability to, see a list of points, or see, the detailed data for the data layer that you have on the map. So like this would be like if you just wanted to see like I selected this tract and what are the couple of points that fall within there, you could quickly see that too.
And that's just for the single layer.
Yeah, that's just for this single layer map. So for, exporting, so there's, that sidebar is kind of where you can, export the data. So if you wanted to download like a list of points, or download, census tract level data based off of a location that you set, you do that through that sidebar using those quick downloads. You can also, export a, like an image of your map. So basically kind of, a PDF or a PNG kind of image file of a map that you created. So that you would access from this print icon over here on the right-hand side. So this little print button will bring open the print modal, where you can, drag your map around to kind of get to, where you want to be. You can zoom in and out. You can, over here on the right-hand side, you can like turn on and off different legends, change some of the options. As like I said, it's either PDF or PNG exports. Change your orientation and layout, and then you basically just would click on export, and this would come through your browser as well. It just kind of pops up after a few minutes. Are there any other just kind of general questions at this point before I jump into some of the other features?
Yeah, I mean, I just have like a question about, I mean, this tool is amazing. Like, it's really amazing being able to like click on these different tracks and get all this information. I think that like the number one use case I can imagine right now for us, right, is where we have like this list of addresses. Like, is there a way to like import like a CSV or an Excel file or something with like addresses and zip codes or something, and then like have those points like a map created out of those, and then like being able to pull in all this information that you're highlighting? Is that like a function?
Yeah. Yeah, so I can do that next. I can just do the that's using our self-service data loader, where you could like just get a list of addresses, load them in to be displayed as points, and then then you can kind of like see which of those points fall within low moderate income areas or different eligibility areas, and you can also use like our download.
Can it like identify the census tract if you just have like a mailing address? It can identify which census tract it's in and like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's great.
So yeah, let me do that, since that seems to be the main use case for you guys. So let me open up. I just have like a very simple list of addresses that I can demo really quick. So I'll show you this first. So this is going to be obviously really, really simple, but so when you want to kind of like upload a list of addresses through our self-service data loader, as long as you have basically like the address, city, state, zip code, those are going to be kind of like the, the main fields that you'll need in your CSV. It is like a CSV, file type that you would need to save it as before importing it into PolicyMap. You can have other fields in your data set. So you can have, I think it's like up to 50 different fields in the data. But as long as you have like address, city, state, and zip, or if you already have something that's like geocoded and has latitude, longitude coordinates, that's also something you can just easily kind of push into PolicyMap as well. You can do through the self-service data loader. Right now, you can upload up to 5,000 addresses at once, so kind of like within a single batch. You can do as many batches as you want, but the per batch limit is 5,000 right now. So those are sort of like some of the parameters around kind of the data file when you're creating that.
So this question,
sure.
In terms of like the row on top, like does it matter a lot what you label each row? Like if you had I don't know what but if it's a zip code instead of zip or something, would that throw it off, or is it, yeah?
No, yeah, it's pretty good with like zip versus zip code. Like it's, I'll show you kind of where you can actually just kind of tell like our geocoder, like this is actually the zip code field. This is actually the location, like the street address field.
Got it. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. So this is kind of like nobody's going to have data like looks this simple, but this is like a very simple, for demonstration purposes, kind of data set. So let me close this, and this is all just going to be in Sacramento. So this is the data loader. Is going to be something that right now is still just in the legacy tool. So I'll jump over to the legacy and then we'll load our data in. It's a little bit funky because the data loader is in the legacy tool, but you can like, once you've loaded it in through the data loader, you can like access it in the new platform. So, but that's all stuff that's kind of getting ironed out.
And to be clear, like the new platform is also going to have this data upload functionality. It's not just like, okay.
Yeah, it's just basically kind of finishing up some of like the UI adjustments for making that same functionality work in the new tool. So let me go to the legacy tool. We'll kind of load the data in through the data loader on legacy, and then I can show you like where you would access it. So the data loader, this is going to be the legacy tool. So you'll see it looks a little bit different. But the self-service data loader is going to be this tab up here. And so when you're using the self-service data loader, you can, just add points directly on the map. But, for the most part, people are using this, upload a spreadsheet of points. You can give your data set a name. So and then you would set, who you want this to be accessible to. So you can use, I'll just use myself, but you can use like select individuals, and you have to put in email addresses for the different folks you want to be able to like also access this data. The publicly shareable is kind of a no longer really relevant, kind of the old leftover piece.
So once, like if I were to upload all of our business advising clients and share it with everyone on this call, they would be able to see that as like an additional layer it would show up as?
They would see it as points. So yeah, so this
points,
yeah. So the self-service data loader is just allows you to upload address level data to be displayed as points on the map. So we don't have currently like the functionality to upload your own layer into the tool. Or to have like, I loaded a whole bunch of points and now I want to be able to like quote unquote layerize that to see like how many different projects we have like within a given zip code area. It's really kind of like addresses as points. That's kind of the main utility of it right now.
And that's what I meant. I just used the wrong word.
Yeah, I know. We use our own. Everybody, yeah, we think everybody else knows exactly what we're talking about.
No, thank you.
You can change your icon shape, color, and size, and then we do have like some spreadsheet tips, kind of some of the stuff that I just went over with you guys, and then a sample spreadsheet if you want to kind of work from something like a template. And so then you would just go find your data file. And then you would click on import. So this is the step where you would say, it's going to use basically those field headers to try and identify, what's like the street address, the city, state, and zip. But if I had sort of like an unconventional name, like something that was like location of projects or something like that, that was not just like address that it could kind of like easily pick up on, then that field would, show up down here, and you would just have to tell it, the data type is the address, like that's the street address. Use this as the street address. So that's kind of how that works. And then, anything that's sort of like not identified immediately or picked up on as like an address field will show up down here, and then you can select different data types and do a little bit as far as kind of like displaying those data types. So then on the next screen, this is where it's going to basically kind of take those lists of addresses and then try and, geocode them. So assign latitude, longitude coordinates to actually place a point on the map. And this summary screen tells you kind of a result, what's the result of that. And so it will say, up here at the top, 128 of those 129 points in my data set were successfully geocoded. And you can, sort your results using these, the field headers that show up here in this modal. So if I wanted to, like if I had a handful of results that were not geocoded, I could sort by that, geocoded row, and the orange, or excuse me, the red dot would mean that, a match was not found for that address. The green dot means that it was matched, and you can like see the actual coordinates here. And then you can make adjustments and edits to your list of addresses kind of on the fly here. So like, I'll see like, oh, there's some weird characters in this address. Let me try and put in like an actual address number here. You can make that edit on the fly, and then it will, kind of just re-geocode it now that I've changed like the address information, and now it's found that match. And so that's kind of the process of actually geocoding. And then after you've kind of done all that, you can, save and close this, and then I can, show you now that it's loaded in through the data loader. I can show you, where you can access this data. So I will jump back to the new platform. And so let's go up to Sacramento. And so when you load that data through the data loader, you'll find it under this My Data tab. So this is that data set that I just loaded, the sample addresses in Sacramento. You'll see any other kind of like, data that you may have loaded through the self-service data loader. And similarly, if you shared this with anybody, they would see this same data set listed up here in their My Data tab.
So sorry, how are you share, or how do you know if it's shared with like across the team?
So on the actual data loader page is where you would set those permissions. So here, yeah. So like when you create it, you would like, in this, there's these, steps that you would, where there's a step basically after you could put in a name, I think. that
Oh,
you're
I see myself. Yep.
So if you put select individuals, then you do have to put individual addresses, but you can put in their addresses here and add another one to have it shared.
Sorry, is publicly shareable our team or like everyone on PolicyMap?
So yeah, so publicly shareable is like is used to be kind of like a shared with everybody. We basically used to have the ability through those data menus to be for people to be able to like share their own data. That ended up not really being a thing we wanted to sustain. So it's a little bit of a non. It's like a legacy thing that doesn't really exist anymore. So when we kind of roll this out into the new platform, that option likely won't be there. But
Got it.
yeah, so if you want to share with your team, you would use the select individuals and put in email addresses.
Got it. So even though we have like 10 usernames, it's not like when one of the users creates something, it automatically goes to all 10. You have to individually every time send it to those people.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
Okay.
And you can, always kind of like, if I come back to the data loader and I wanted to like edit any of the permissions, let me just exit out of this. So this is where you can kind of come back and like make edits after you've actually loaded something through the data loader. So you can click on this little pencil icon to edit this. And then here you can like update the permissions, change some of the, like the icon shape, change the name, or like add additional, data or like actually modify the data. So that's, you would kind of come back into the actual data loader tool to like access and edit anything about that data set that you loaded.
If we only have like a zip code and we don't have it all the way down to an address, would you still be able to load those points?
So I don't believe so. I think you really need to have a street address in order for the data loader to be able to drop a point on the map. It doesn't just like select a center point of a zip code or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so when you're using the data loader, at least for right now, it's really you need to have kind of like a complete street address.
Okay.
Let me just jump back here really quick. I was getting a notification. I just want to see if anybody was getting blocked out.
Oh, I let Ken in.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So if I go back to the My Data tab now and I load these, this data set that I loaded through the data loader. So here's, those addresses. So, similarly, you can click on these if you have other attributes in there, you can, see those things. And then, if you were to like just click on an individual census tract, then you could use, this see list of points to see like, okay, which of those addresses that I just loaded in are located in that census tract that I just selected. You could also do, again, like, you could do, show me all the points that are located, using this set location bar, put in like a particular zip code or something like that. If I wanted to see like all the points that are located in 95838. Similarly, you can kind of, set that as your location or your kind of bounding geography, and then use the see list of points to see which ones fall within like an area that you selected on the map.
And how do we get all the points that we uploaded?
If you wanted to like just download a list of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with whatever like layer you have.
Okay, yeah. So if you wanted to do something like that, so that's kind of the so right now, like we were just looking at in this sidebar over here, when you're looking at your list, you can either look at your list of points within that selected location, or you can look at your data layer for, like which tracks fall within your selected area. But if you wanted to kind of get your points with the layer attached to it, we do have that. It's in our kind of like more complete data download function, which is another one of those things that's still getting rolled into the new platform. So I can show you, since this is, again, I think kind of a use case that you guys are particularly interested in. I can show you that in the legacy tool. So again, pull up my sample addresses, and if we wanted to put on, let's do like CRA eligibility. No, that's an MTC. Okay, so we have CRA eligibility, and then we have our points. And so if we wanted to download the points with like that track designation attached to it, then from this, again, like it's just in the legacy tool right now, but eventually will be kind of pulled over and will be accessible in that same sidebar location. If you click on this download data option, there's these first two, which is sort of similar to what we've been looking at in that sidebar: download your layer, download your points. And then the third option is your points with the layer data attached to it, or like assigned to it. So that would basically be like, here's the track designation for each of those point locations. That's the third option. Then on this second step, it's like, what location do you want to use? You can either use one of our built-in boundaries, where you could do like all of Sacramento County. There's also something that we can talk about. There's the ability to create custom regions. So that would be like create a radius, draw an area on the map, and then use that as kind of like your area to download a list of points or layers, or to download, this export.
Could you do like the whole U.S. as like a region? Because we have, for example, we have clients across the country.
You can. So in this select location step, it's not super obvious, but you can type in United States, and that's basically kind of like your selected location that you would be using. And in this case, it would kind of like produce, an export with all census tracts across the US. Those do end up taking a little bit longer to generate. So if you are going to do kind of like a nationwide download, those do tend to, especially with like a point with a layer attached to it, those will take a little longer to pop up, and they usually come through in your email.
How about just for the points? Like, can I select all the points that you uploaded with the layer? Like, what location would you enter?
So yeah, I mean, it can be. You do have to, through this tool, you do have to kind of like set either a location based off of like a custom geography that you've created, or you would have to select like the state of California or some kind of boundary to kind of like sort of set as your bounding geography to download the data. So it's not something where you can just say like, just download like the full universe of points with census tracts assigned just, where like the point exists. So it operates a little bit differently. So you may need to kind of like use just sort of like a bigger area than like what as far as kind of like where your points exist. So if you have like a point data set for multiple counties in California, you may want to just use like California as your bounding geography. What ends up coming out is just your list of points with tracks assigned to it. So like the output looks like that, but there's not a way to kind of like say, just show me all the points outside of using some sort of location as sort of your bounding geography.
And there's no way to make a custom region like every census tract that has a point in it or something?
Not No, there's not. The custom regions are really more like you can draw or set a radius, or you can assemble, but it's kind of more of like you have to select the census tracts like kind of like by mouse click rather than kind of like by like a query like where there's an intersection.
Got it. And then one other question is just like, so this is just for like CRA eligibility. What if we wanted to do CRA eligibility and, a poverty rate measure and, like 2 or 3 or 4 different data points tied to each location?
So for right now, it's just kind of like single layer through this, points with layer download. But it's not something, that is uncommon. Like we've heard that request before. So I know like eventually we would like to be able to like have like almost like a premium sort of download sort of function, which would allow for like adding multiple layers to your export. But yeah, for right now, it's more of a single indicator download. So you would, if you wanted to like look at poverty rates and CRA eligibility, and attach kind of each of those layers to your locations, then you would have to produce individual exports, and then it's generally pretty straightforward as far as kind of like then you would have to kind of like join them outside of PolicyMap.
Yeah. Okay. Sense. Yeah, understood.
So the multi-layer option, that's not adding more layers to the export?
Not to the export. The multi-layer is really like a multi-layer, gives you the ability to have multiple layers on the map and then like set criteria, but it's not really for exporting data. It's more for like creating the map with showing those areas of overlap.
And what sort of integrations do you guys have with PolicyMap to like other data warehouses or other like sources?
I wouldn't say like we do like custom kind of integrations with other data warehouses or data systems or applications or anything like that. We, if it's like we do kind of like, are happy to kind of like hear suggestions as far as like other data sources that we may not have that like we should consider adding into PolicyMap. And then, like sometimes there's like ways in which through the custom data, sort of like part of the premium subscription where like we can kind of bridge that gap a little bit, where like we've had like some customers who like store a lot of data in Salesforce, and then they're like, here's like some data in Salesforce. Can you help like with like incorporating that into PolicyMap so we can use it in PolicyMap? So there's maybe like some opportunities for that kind of thing. But in terms of like custom sort of like integrations right now, there's not really much that we do.
Okay, so I think that's something that I would be interested in. The immediate like use case for me is having a list of lending addresses and then seeing if they're CRA eligible. And I'm trying to think like, it seems like the way would be for me to manually go in and like upload the points, download the layer. But yeah, I think that's something that we would be interested in, like learning more about like some sort of integration.
Yeah, because right, can we use like we have like multiple definitions, right? It's like the poverty rate of the census tract,
right.
CRA eligibility, as well as like unemployment rate, and then but it sounds like we can do that offline. But yeah, in the future, it'd be great if that was all.
Yeah. So just to confirm, I mean, like at this point, the way to kind of address that type of use case is more of, through if you're going to use the self-service kind of data loader to get those points in there, that would be, upload it, then download it with the layer attached, and you have to do that for each individual indicator that you're interested in, kind of stamping to each address.
And I guess the alternative is I download the layer not with points, and just like for the entire US or like California, for instance. And then on like our end, we just match it based on the census tract because these don't change that often, right? It's
The census tracts, like the boundaries.
no, like the CRA eligibility, that won't be changing like daily, you know? So if I
No, yeah.
download this once a year or something,
Hmm.
with all the census tracts, like that's possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Or I guess with 5,000 rows. Hmm.
So that 5,000 is just for uploads of addresses through that self-service data loader. So if you were just kind of like trying to like basically like export a layer or like an indicator out for use outside of PolicyMap, there's not like a 5,000 limit.
Okay. Can I download multiple layers if I'm not like using the data points? Like if I just wanted to know poverty, unemployment, CRA eligibility, can I download those three like say columns in one export?
So there's a little bit of a workaround in the legacy tool that you can do from this 3-layer maps, which is kind of like the old version of what is now multi-layer maps, where you could kind of do that. It's like not, again, it's sort of not the intended purpose, but there is like you could have like 3 layers that you just sort of like select from the data menu, and then you just would export those 3 in your data download. There is like a state by state limitation with that one though. So it's not going to be by the nation, but like if you had like, 3 different indicators for the state of California that you wanted to download, you basically just sort of in 3-layer maps, add those 3 layers, don't change any of your criteria because you just want like all the data. And then you use the download data so this would be kind of like the really quick and dirty basically like add a few data layers, and then from here you can use the data download, and it just basically like you could, again, it has like a state by state. You could try the all states, although I didn't think that worked, but usually it's like more of a state by state download, and then it would include those 3 indicators that you put on the map, but it's still just 3 even from here.
Okay. Got it.
So, but
Thanks.
that's where like if there's things like where you're just trying to get like a census tract export with like 5 indicators with it to use in something outside of PolicyMap that you have to do for some sort of reporting every year or something like that I may be able to kind of, again, sort of bridge that gap with like the custom data kind of work that we include with the premium, where I could just kind of like export the data and hand you like a flat file.
Okay. Right, because this is limited to 3. Okay, yeah, that cool.
So let me go back to here. So I know that we're at 4:15. So and we kind of jumped over to the data loader. There's the couple of other things that I kind of mentioned or that we've kind of talked about quickly, is the multi-layer maps, which kind of showed that real quick 3-layer maps example, but the multi-layer mapping in the new platform is, again, not so much about exporting the data, but it's kind of more about like putting a couple of layers on the map, changing some criteria, and then sort of like seeing areas that meet either that sort of overlapping or intersecting criteria on those couple of layers. For the new platform multi-layer maps, you can do up to 5 layers. But this is kind of at the moment more of a just for the visualization, and there's not really a download kind of piece with multi-layer maps in the new platform. And then the other thing is the custom regions. So, the ability to create your own regions, and basically with these you can draw, like I've said a couple times, draw them, assemble a couple of tracks, create a radius, and this would be kind of more for maybe you have like your loans are in like a couple of states, so you might be able to create like a assembled region that's like California and Arizona and Nevada, and then kind of use that as like your location that you may want to like download or see a list of points that fall within that custom region. You can share
for this. For this one example I can think of that we may use this for is we have like a list of zip codes that associate with one of our partners. Would I be able to like upload a bunch of zip codes to create this custom region, or I would have to do assembled region and kind of like add each of the hundreds of zip codes?
Okay, yeah. If it's like hundreds, then that, yeah, it is more of like a selection where you would have to select them on the map. So if it's hundreds, it's obviously not really going to be a good solution. So that's something where, again, like if you just had that list of zip codes and you wanted, them to be available as like a custom region or as like a service area kind of polygon or something like that, that's something that we could load in for you and then make it available as like essentially a custom region. It would probably be up in this My Data. It would just be made like available for you guys to be able to access and use as like a custom region.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, that's like the assembled region is more for
like picking a couple things.
Picking a few things, yeah. Again, it's like for kind of a bigger area, it may not really be the best option, but this is sort of how this works. Click on them and then, save that area. And the other options are the radius and the drawn area.
Thanks.
So, but those custom regions basically kind of work the same way as like any set location that you might put in, where if you have any kind of data points on the map, you can, or, a data layer, you can, see a list of points that fall within that selected location. So if you had like, some loan data loaded and then wanted to see like which ones fall within like specific custom geography that's useful for you guys, that would be how you would kind of get to that and use this to download the data. There's also just sort of like a couple of standard reports in here. The main one that's kind of has just a lot of demographic info is this community profile, where if you wanted to like, you're doing work in an area and you just want to like be able to generally pull like a quick summary report that has like a lot of demographic info, you could use the community profile report. So and this is also something you can like just run for like a zip code or a census tract or another sort of built-in boundary within PolicyMap. So yeah, so I know, again, we're already over, so I don't want to kind of keep going on, but any other questions that I can answer now?
One thing, I think you brought it up briefly in the beginning, but curious if there's any kind of like external facing, like once we create layers with the points that we want, is there opportunities to share externally, whether it be on our website or in reports or applications?
Yeah, so when you create any kind of maps, so you can export the data we've talked about a bit. You can export like a static map. There's also the ability to, create like an embedded map. So if you, put on some data layers and data points, and then you want to be able to, kind of like have a map, that current map view, embed that like on a web page. This little share icon in the bottom right has like an embed feature where you can just basically kind of take that map view and then you get like an iframe code to embed on a website. So that's one way of kind of sharing like an interactive map externally. And then the other one is like if you had, that's kind of going to be limited to like just one layer and data point like at a time. If you wanted to create sort of like a more, like robust sort of external facing mapping tool that you would embed like on your website is we have the widgets, which are part of the premium subscription, which is like you can have a handful of data layers. The users can like toggle on and off different data layers. It can include PolicyMap data, as well as like if we were to do some sort of like custom data load for you guys as far as like your loan portfolio or something like that, then can kind of combine those two. So that's some of the options there.
Cool, thank you.
Any other questions? Happy to answer just kind of before we sign off. Does not seem like it. So thank you guys for the time this afternoon, and sorry we did go a little bit over. Yeah, just let me know if you have any questions as you start kind of exploring the tool a little bit more. And yeah, happy to help support your use of PolicyMap as much as I can.